Episode of This Week with Sabir. And in today's hot seat, we have the incredible Luke Hohmann. Luke is founder and CEO of First Root, a benefit corporation devoted to creating great economic equality, a serial entrepreneur. Luke's last company, Conteneo, was an enterprise software company that helped global companies manage investment portfolios using participatory budgeting. That's a mouthful, Luke. We're going to talk about that a lot.
Yeah, we are.
By the end of this show, I'm going to know how to pronounce it properly.
Or just say PB. We often say just PB.
Luke is now leveraging the experience that he gained working with some of the world's largest companies to help prepare our children for their future by bringing PB, participatory budgeting, into schools to teach financial literacy, civics, and design thinking. Luke, welcome to the show.
I am so happy to be here. And I know tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and I want to start with gratitude. I am thankful to be here. And I mean that sincerely. It was really great to meet you and look at some of your work, and it's inspiring. So this will be fun.
Luke, I'm thankful that you're joining me on a Wednesday afternoon, the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Where basically the whole world has shut down, basically, in the United States. Everybody is in mindset of Thanksgiving right now.
Yeah, and all of the people are doing their last minute errands and their last minute stuff, but we got time for this show.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's going to be really beneficial, especially with whether they're the teachers who are tuning in or families that are tuning in with kids in their family. I'll tell you a personal story, and then we will jump right into this topic.
Sure.
Growing up, my dad was a business owner. He owned a toy store, so I have learned quite a lot about business from him. At a very young age. I think I was maybe 6 years old. He would take me to his store. He owned that one store, and I would actually do inventory with him. And I learned about counting and understanding inventory and stuff like that as a very young kid. But later on, he sold that business. It was gone, right? Then I kind of missed that part in my life. I went to school and education. Math was always at my heart. I love math and stuff like that. But going through the education system, I can tell you my personal experience. I went through the public schools here in New York, right? Going through high school. The only thing remotely, I would say, that would anything to do with numbers besides math was economics class. That's all I took in high school, right? Yep. So that's the only thing that was offered, and that's what I took. I can tell you through college, no personal finance, nothing, right? Even though every college campus you go to, there is a strong presence of credit cards, and students are encouraged to sign up for their credit cards to start their credit history. Right. Coming out of college, I went like, I don't know anything about this stuff. I don't know anything about stock market. I don't know anything about, all these things that I hear about, the Dow going up and winners beating losers and stuff like that. It was like a foreign language. But every night on TV, and I'm talking about, this is at the era of when there was no internet, right?
Right.
That I didn't understand any of that stuff. So I started poking around. That's when I discovered Warren Buffett, and I said, okay, let me see what he's reading. Yeah, he was reading Benjamin Graham's Intelligent Investor, and later on the more massive book is Security Analysis. Then I came across an amazing author, Robert Kiyosaki. I'm a huge fan of his. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then I basically ate up every single book that he ever published or he co-authored with others. To kind of learn about this stuff. But the thing is, in this narrative I just told you, I had to do all of those things. And thank God for the younger Sabir at 20 years old, deciding to take that journey on to read all these things and kind of educate myself. I think that was a great foundation that made me a better entrepreneur, a person who could run businesses and stuff like that. Mind you, the degree I got from college was a BA degree in computer science. I did not take a single business course or a marketing course, but now I'm really well known for growth hacking businesses and growing them and stuff like that. So I think that you and I, when we talked about this episode, I saw tremendous value, because to me, it's not just about personal finance and teaching kids how to learn about personal finance and civics, right? It's also about, I think that that's where the roots of entrepreneurship start. And that's what this show is about. This show is about entrepreneurship, startups, founders, growing your business, learning through your growing pains and stuff like that. To me, what we're doing today, even though this is, this is the 47th episode of this show. By the way, we have number 50 coming up. It's going to be a tremendous guest. I have a surprise for my audience on that. So that's kind of my narrative. I wanted to kind of share that with you. Like, that's the personal journey I have gone through with personal finance, and I see a strong need for what you're doing, and it's tremendous. And I wanted to bring that to my audience and to kind of share that with them. And I took about 5 minutes telling my personal story here. So Luke, tell me, how can we help these kids get better at personal finance?
Well, Sabir, I actually really appreciate you taking that time, because there is so much I took in terms of notes on my piece of paper here that we can unpack. And it's going to be so powerful to unpack it for the audience, because we'll make those connections, you and me, to this history that you have, which is so critical. So the first thing I want to point out that I think is really critical, so if it's okay, I'm going to unpack it with you, is notice that financial literacy is associated with our families and a life skill. And what I mean by that is, you talked about math and you talked about computer science, right? I'm a computer scientist too. And discrete math doesn't have emotion, right? Like, you remember when we did Turing Complete, and you did computability, and you did database design. There's no emotion in that. It's just kind of algebra and various forms of math. But financial literacy is math applied, and it's applied as we make our choices. And therefore, there's actually 3 skills that you need in the life skill of financial literacy. You need the knowledge, like, what is a stock? What is a bond? You need the skill, how do I compare 2 stocks? But then you need to know yourself. And if I'm comparing 2 stocks, which one of those stocks are aligned with my values? Maybe I believe in, maybe I love pets, and I can buy a stock in construction, or I can buy a stock in a pet company, and I just love pets, so I put the stock in the pet company. And the idea here is that our personal world is affecting us. And now I want to keep going on that. Your personal world included a father who had a successful toy store. And so in reality, if you look at the research, most personal finance and most financial education starts at the age of 2. And at the age of 2 is when we make a purchase request. It's the first time a child says, around the age of 2 is when they say to mom and dad, I want you to buy me cereal. I'm at the store. I want you to buy me fruit. And usually it's like not some terrible thing. It's like, mom and dad would, like, I want this. And because we start to recognize, like, around the age of 2, I have my own wants and needs and desires. And I want to get apple. I want to get an apple. I want a banana. I want something. The next step in most financial literacy comes in the stage of around age 4, which is called an assisted purchase, where your mom and dad will bring you to the cash register or take you to the farmer's market, and they'll give you some money, and they'll kind of show you how a transaction works. Now, mom and dad aren't thinking they're teaching you financial literacy. They're just keeping the kids busy because the kids are getting antsy because you're at the store. And now your dad, I'm sure your dad wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to teach Sabir financial literacy. Nope. He's thinking, no, I have a toy store, and it's my responsibility today to take care of the kid. So I'm going to integrate him into my life. And I love when parents integrate their children into their life. But now think about all of those delicious and important topics that you were actually starting to be exposed to. The concept of supply and demand, the concept of inventory. And a 6-year-old understands this. You understood, like, hey, Sabir, count the toys because I want to check the number I think I've sold and the number I've actually sold. I want to make sure I didn't get any, we call it loss or theft.
By the way, look, I
Yeah.
would count it first, and my elder brother, who was 2 years older than me, would count it a second time, and we would compare to see if our numbers matched.
Brilliant. And now you're learning checks and balances,
Yeah.
and you're learning all these really important things. And so I think that that's one of the things that we realize. If you just take a step back, you do realize that you get exposed to these things. And so then the question becomes, well, if I'm getting exposed to all of this, why would I need personal finance education in school? Like, I don't need that because Luke just outlined everything that I got. The issue is this: when our parents were at the same age that we are, the world of finance was vastly simpler. Vastly simpler. They had a few they had a few credit card options. The mortgages were very simple. There was a checking account, a savings account, a 30-year mortgage, a 15-year mortgage, a very simple credit card. That's it, right? And car loans were very, very basic. You get a car loan, it's X percent, you pay per month. Now the world has exploded in financial complexity. I'm not arguing against it. I'm simply saying that we have so many more challenges. For example, just think about insurance for healthcare. Most of the time, workers that were covered through an employee-sponsored plan. And at the time that the insurance was done, back when our parents were around, the insurance was fully paid for, and because it was less costly, and there were only one or two plans options offered. Now you have insurers who provide multiple plans. Each plan has different impacts on how much you pay out of pocket, how much you contribute, and these choices all affect your risk profile. They're influenced by your age. They're influenced by your family structure. And so what you find is that one of the root causes of the need for financial literacy and personal finance education in schools is that our kids are dealing with so much more complexity in the world. I mean, come on, our mom and dad never dealt with a cryptocurrency or an NFT. Really important stuff, by the way, really brilliant stuff, really exciting stuff, but it's definitely more complex. And so we want to prepare and make sure we're ready. Now, there's a second part that I'll get to, but I just thought what you were talking about was so powerful because you were having a life experience that was very powerful. And I actually would argue that some of the seeds of your own success, you got your degree in in computer science, but you also saw your dad market his business. And I'm sure at the dinner table, as you were growing up, you might have talked about, oh, we're running this ad in the newspaper, or we're having a sale, or we're doing it. Hey, Christmas season is coming up, Sabir. You're going to have to help with the store a little bit. And you're like, oh, and you were learning, I'm confident, skills and experiences from your dad about marketing that you brought into your success in your companies and the growth hacks.
I mean, I can tell you that when I reflect back, I don't know if that was true at that time, but one of the things I realized when I was working at my dad's toy store, when the adults came in and they were looking for a specific toy, and I would tell them what I liked, 100% close rate. They would buy the stuff and take it with them. That's it. When my dad was trying to sell it, they wanted to see some selection, different things, talk to them about like this toy versus that toy, whatever. But the thing is, whenever I spoke to the customers, done. My brother spoke to the customers, done. That's it. They would just go like, oh, you like it? That sounds great.
Yeah, and think about how that influenced you and what you know now about social media, what you know and what you bring in terms of
Influencer
growth,
marketing.
influencer marketing. And there is, I forgot the young person's name, but there's a kid on YouTube who makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year, literally just reviewing toys. He's one of the top YouTubers. And he started, I think his parents, I don't think they did it on like a plan. They just started showing the kid
Just talking about it. Yeah.
talking about toys. And then they realized, hey, wait a minute, there's a following because he's good at it. And I think that that's kind of really amazing that you had that opportunity, because it obviously showed you the power of influencer marketing. Now, again, sometimes we have that accessible to us, and sometimes it takes us to get a little older to realize and reflect on our own experience. But that's really important. Now notice what you did, right? You actually took the initiative, and I've done the same thing, right? I've read Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, great author, great concept. I've looked at Warren Buffett stuff. I've read most of The Intelligent Investor. I haven't read the entire book. It's on my bookshelf.
By the way, that's a summary of the security analysis book.
Right. It's pretty deep stuff. But the point is that you took it upon yourself to engage in these activities. And what you really learned is the next thing I want to talk about is you have to distinguish between the activities that help us manage our money, cash flow, versus the activities that help us build wealth. And Kiyosaki is one of the most profound writers on this topic. But what you find is that, especially with low to moderate income Americans, we know that there's a massive racial wealth gap. We know that.
Definitely.
Now you can argue about the amount. It doesn't really matter. It's big. And one of the fallacies is that people think that people of color, who may not have wealth, are not smart about money. And that's not true. They're often very smart about how to manage the flow of money or the cash flow, but they haven't been taught the strategies of wealth creation. And so if you were to boil down Robert Kiyosaki's advice into one thing, and I'm fairly simplifying in some ways, but I'm going to boil it down. His basic advice is own assets, right? But to understand what that really means, he's written a really good book. But the point is, you found that advice, and many low to moderate income people never hear that advice. So they don't know what an asset is, and they don't know how to own one or change their world so they can get to owning one. Now, some of the more common asset classes, like home ownership, are becoming increasingly challenging in our current society, but we still have other asset classes that people can participate in, notably equities or owning stock in companies. And even the small change of creating enough of a budget so that you can do a little bit of dollar cost averaging into an asset that eventually accumulates and provides a return. That kind of change is what can transform people's lives. And that's why, again, we need personal finance in school so that we can help people understand when they're making an investment and when they're using cash flow to live a life. Like cash flow is, I need gas. Okay. Or I'm getting for gas for my car, or I'm actually creating choices that create assets. Those kinds of things are really important, and we have to teach it.
You know what's interesting? Two things I want to address with what you just said. I think low to medium income families, one of the challenges, I believe, because the thing is, I live in Queens. This is where I grew up. You know, I went to school here, Queens, New York, and what I can tell you, I've seen low to medium income families. Right, the challenge is reference point. Right. Well, if you don't have that reference point in your life, somebody who you can look up to say, oh, you know what? My uncle bought a 2-unit apartment, and his renters are paying the mortgage on the thing, and he owns it, and that's it, and that's his asset, and he can just keep on. The renters will keep on paying, and the absence of that reference point makes it very, very difficult because I don't know what the North Star looks like. If I'm in that low to medium, income family, middle income families. So I think that's really important, and especially in a context of school. If you're not educated in that aspect, now I'm going to go to the other extreme, right? You're a well-to-do doctor, right? You're earning $400,000 a year, and what are the assumptions about doctors? You're a high earner. You better have a Porsche. You better have a mini mansion, and you're investing a ton of money in looking great, right? And what I can tell you that one of the classes of people who go bankrupt most of the time are doctors, actually, because medical school never teaches you, even though you're a super smart guy, right? The school never taught you how to handle money, right? So even though you're earning a gigantic paycheck on the other side of that low to medium income, right? You're on the other side of the pond, right? You're doing amazingly well according to all these standards, earning $400,000 minimum, and if you're a neurosurgeon, you're doing well over $1 million a year, right? But the thing is, cash flow and that financial education, knowing that what you keep is what counts, not the fact that what you earned.
Yeah, and let's actually build on that now, because this is really exciting stuff. There's a term that I've learned that has recently been introduced to talk about people that you just described. They're actually called, and this is a cool new term for me, maybe you've heard of this, but it's called the affluent poor. So
never heard it before.
Yeah, isn't that an amazing term?
Yeah.
And it describes the people that you're with, because they're affluent by any stretch of the imagination, right? $400,000 a year is a ton of money. I mean, heck, in most places, making more than $100,000 a year is a ton of money, and yet they're poor. So how can that be? And your point is very well articulated. It occurs because as they make more money, they change their lifestyle, and it's because they're not understanding the distinction between cash flow, asset creation. And to your point, they were never taught how to handle money, which is, now I'm going to bring this back into the reason we're talking, is First Root. The entire premise of First Root is radically simple, and yet it's extremely profound. We teach kids how to manage money by giving kids money to manage.
Wow.
Meaning we literally teach them how to handle money, but it's not in some fake simulation. It's not in some game. It's not in some stock market thing where you go to kids and you give them completely farcical perspectives. Like my son, I have 4 kids. And I remember when one of my kids was in high school, he said, "Dad, I'm really excited. In my economics class, we're going to do a stock market simulation." And I said, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm going to do business stuff like you do." And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "We're going to invest." I'm like, "Oh." And I'm thinking like you are, Sabir, right? I'm thinking value investment, and what are they going to teach the kids? So here's what they did. They gave them $100,000 of virtual money and said, whoever makes the most money in 3 months by investing in the virtual stock market will get an ice cream sundae from, ice cream from the ice cream store. And I said to my son, I said, that's not how value investing works, right? We don't go to the stock market and say, how much money can I make in 3 months?
That's day trading.
That's day trading at best, right?
Yeah.
And I said, you might as well go to Vegas and gamble. And so then what I found, and part of the reason I'm doing First Root, is I got really frustrated. And I'm like, I had to reteach my son all of what you and I learned on our own. And so I had to do double the work. Like, it would have been better had the school not taught him anything, because what they taught him was wrong. And now, how do we actually do this thing with real money? Well, we don't walk up to the school and say, here's some money, kids, figure it out, right? That's not education. What we actually have is a very clear program. And the program is based on participatory budgeting. And it consists of a process supported by software and supported by a curriculum. So first, let me talk about the process. In the process of participatory budgeting, it goes through 5 stages, and we use the 5D stages. So the D is in dog, but let me explain the D. The kids design. I'm sorry. I was jumping to my favorite stage. The kids discover, dream, design, decide, and do. So let me explain. In the discovery phase, the school and the kids identify opportunities to make the school better. In the dream phase, they take those ideas of problems and they dream about solutions. In the design phase, they take those ideas and they design specific solutions that are enumerated. So I'll go through these 3 stages right now with an example. And I'm going to use Queens, New York as my example because one of our customers is the Academy of American Studies in Queens.
Well,
so we went to Queens and they got $2,000 for their program. And they discovered, they went out and they talked with the other kids and they were like, okay, what are the challenges that we're facing? And what they found was that they wanted more chemistry and science equipment, but they also found that the girls didn't have the products that they needed in the bathrooms. The bathrooms needed help. So now they dreamed, what are the things that we could do in the dream stage? Well, we could get some equipment, we could do these things. And then in the design phase, they take those raw ideas and they actually make very concrete proposals. So let's say that the raw idea was to get a 3D printer. Well, you and I can't do anything if someone says, let's get a 3D printer. We're like, okay, where are we going to buy it? And how much is it going to cost? And where are we going to put it? And did you include supplies? So the design phase is where the kids, not the teachers, not the parents, the kids go through all of the detailed work to figure out every one of those answers. You know, I'm going to buy it on Amazon. It's going to cost $429 for the printer. We're going to put it in this part of the building. We confirm that the power and the space requirements are okay. We're also going to spend $84 on supplies that will last for this amount of time. That goes into a proposal. And now the next stage, the 4th stage is decide. We create a voting ballot and then the kids vote. So now they're learning civics. They're learning about the notion of who votes and why do they vote and what do you vote for? And then when the voting results are ratified, what we do is we actually put into the school, we implement what the kids chose.
So the kids actually go through their process of selecting, so that as as a unified team, they're deciding their fate, so that none of the kids could say, "Oh, I didn't want this."
That's right.
They go through the process, and they're part of it.
And what's exciting about that is and it's really humbling, right? Going back to this school, the Academy of American Studies in Queens, the kids actually voted on buying more feminine care hygiene products for the girls' bathroom. And I remember when that happened, Sabir, I brought it to my family and at dinner, and I said, hey, look at what happened. And my wife smiled and she said, oh, you programmers, you're so clueless about girls. And I'm like, okay, what? And she said, well, honey, think about it. If you're a woman and you're menstruating and you don't have the products that you need, you're not going to go to work and you're not going to go to school. You're just going to call in sick. And so that was really profound for me. And it's really one of the motivations for me is we want to listen to the needs of our kids. We want to listen to them tell us what they need. And we have to trust the kids to make these choices, and they make great choices through this process. But let's look at the personal finance side. In that act of creating the proposal, they got to me the most important part of personal finance of all. And the most important part of personal finance is living within your means. It sounds so boring, but it's true as a business owner. You have to have a budget. You have to know what your expenses are. You have to know how much you have to spend, and you have to stay within your budget in your business if you want to have a successful business. I'm going to leave aside all the kind of political shenanigans in our country, you know, printing money and going in debt, whatever. Let's leave that aside. Everyone else, right? Every family, every school, every city, every state, every business has to live within their means. And what we're doing through this process is we give kids a limited amount of money. And I've actually had, you know, Sabir, some schools with rich parents say, oh, we can buy everything that the kids want. And I'm like, that's not the point. You don't want to buy everything that the kids want, because you're missing the opportunity for them to vote, for them to discuss, for them to kind of debate what is the best way to spend our money. These are the life skills that they're going to need in business. When you're running marketing campaigns for your clients, every one of your clients is going to have ideas, and every one of your clients is going to have a budget. And when you start working with them, part of your skill is saying, okay, you guys want to do all of this and you only have this much money. You've hired me to help you make sure that the amount of money you spend has the best impact, has the highest impact, because you can't do everything. And you probably shouldn't do everything. Not everything is a good idea, to be honest. And that's your skill, but you're actually managing a budget.
Yeah. Now, that was one example. Is there any situation where when you went in, it just didn't work?
Not yet, believe it or not. And I guess the question, there's different manifestations of didn't work. So let me explain.
I mean, including, Luke, just to clarify my question, an idea could be a great idea, right? In one scenario, it works great. But in another scenario, because you have to deal with people, right? Sometimes things fail because of people, not that because the idea was bad.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of places where we've had some challenges. One is if adults step in and override the choices of the kids, it's pretty bad. And we did have one example where they went through this process and the kids voted. And then after the kids voted, the adults said, we don't want to do what the kids said. We want to do what we think is right. And they invalidated the kids' vote. It was awful. It was just awful. And so one of the things that we're working on in our process is that we try to help adults realize that it's really the kids in control. And if you don't want to put the kids in control, you probably shouldn't do the process at all. A different manifestation of it not working is, I like to joke, I have a few power tools in my garage that are gathering dust. I also have a few power tools in my garage that I use all the time. And what I mean by that is everyone makes a mistake every now and then with money. And I've had a few mistakes where I've bought something that looked cool that I wanted to get, that people like you, Sabir, with your clever marketing, convinced me that I wanted it and I bought it.
Yeah, I can understand. It's like 11 p.m. You're on your TikTok, and TikTok made me buy it.
That's right. TikTok made me buy it. Or, I'm on one of my business trips and it's 11 p.m. and I'm alone in the hotel room and I'm on
You're bored.
YouTube and I'm like, yeah, that looks cool. And then I come home and my wife is like, seriously, you're going to buy this and you use it once? Like I got an immersion blender and my family laughs at my immersion blender because I use it like 4 times a year. And I'm like, it's so cool. And they're like, you use it 4 times a year, right? And it was one of my weaknesses, right? I saw an ad, it was super cool. Anyway, we all make mistakes with money. No one is perfect with money, and that's okay. If we hold as a standard that our kids can't make mistakes, then we are creating children who, when they go into their own adult life, have never had a chance to make a mistake and have never had a chance to talk about it. And frankly, we have had a couple of participatory budgeting programs where the kids got some materials and it didn't work. In one program, they bought a 3D printer. 3D printers are pretty popular with kids, and I'm not exactly sure why, but a lot of the programs buy them. But in one program, they bought the absolute cheapest possible 3D printer, and it broke after a month. And then the kids found out that because it was from a very low cost offshore manufacturer, there were no replacement parts, and the printer was constructed in a way that they had to throw it out. Like you couldn't repair it.
It was junk.
Now, did they waste money? Sure. However, what a powerful life lesson. That teacher did what teachers do. They brought it to the kids and they said, okay, yes, we wasted a few $100s and we may have gotten a cheap printer, but let's talk about this. When is it appropriate to pay for quality? And you and I have had these experiences, right? Sometimes we buy things that are cheaper. And you've got some exercise equipment in the background. I have a personal story. My wife and I, at the pandemic, right? When the pandemic started, my wife and I couldn't go to the gym, and we thought, oh, okay, well, it'll be a little bit of time before we go back to the gym. So we took one of the bikes that we use on the road and we bought this kit that converts it
to hold it.
Yeah, it's really cool, right? We used it so much we broke it. And then we bought a second one and we used it so much we broke it. And finally, I looked at my wife and I said, look, it's time for us to just make that investment in the Schwinn spinning bike. And she's like, the professional one? I'm like, yeah, like the one you get at a gym, because you and I ride the bike at home, we work out, and we use it enough that we can't keep breaking other equipment. Let's just really invest in the high end. And it was a few $1,000s, but it was worth it because now we have that equipment and again, to me, that's a financial literacy lesson that we can share with our kids in such a way that they start to realize, okay, when do I really need quality? And it manifests in different ways, right? Like I'm glancing at your screen. I can see a little bit of your kitchen. If you're a cook, right? If you talk to any cook, one of the things they're going to tell you is knives are important to them. Like
one of the most important things, yeah.
Getting good, yeah. One of the most important things is getting good quality knives. And I remember when my wife and I got married 22 years ago, I said to my wife, we should get a present for ourselves. Like, what do we want? And we didn't go through a shower or anything like that. It was just like, what do we want? And she looked at me, she said, I'm a cook and I want really, really good knives. I'm like, really? She's like, yeah. So we bought this knife block set from a company, Wusthof Trident. And there's other good knife companies, but Wusthof Trident is known as a good manufacturer. Spent a lot of money on it. And you know what? We still have every single knife. We sharpen them once a year. They work great. So again, these are the life lessons that we need to teach in school. And the best way to teach is learning by doing, hands-on, student-generated, project-based learning, where the students have real outcome and a real a motivation, an intrinsic motivation to learn these concepts.
You know, it's funny. You mentioned, failure, right? And you and I both know, being entrepreneurs, and especially, let's go back to our core, computer scientists. How many times did your programming skills fail? And how many times did you hit the monitor or break the monitor because the code was not working, right?
That's right.
We know failure by the second. That's how much computer scientists know failure. But as entrepreneurs also, you know that most of the learnings that you get, and I'm sure because you're a serial entrepreneur, you have failed so many times and you have learned from one venture to the next venture. You took something from that venture, right?
That's right.
You took something that you learned and you go like, okay, you know what? Next time when I do this, these are the kind of things I need to watch out for. Not necessarily that I'm not going to do it, I'm going to do it, but these are the parameters I'm going to change. These
That's
are the
right.
variables I'm going to change.
That's right.
The inputs needs to change. Maybe the agency, I'm going to be more watchful because the agency said they had the skills to do Facebook ads. Nope, they were a Google Ads company. They had no clue how to do Facebook ads. You
Right.
learn those kinds of things. Like, I mean, that's where. But the thing is, if you look at the education system, especially in the United States, even globally, I think it's very much true. You go to class, you get educated, right? You're taught some lesson in biology, physics, math, social studies, whatever, history, right?
Right.
And then you're given a test. And the test is on or off. Either you passed or you failed.
That's right.
Right? So if you extend that same philosophy into this sort of a program where you're releasing an amazing program, but the context that they have of success is success or failure. That's it. There is no, it's like, oh, you failed, but we taught you this thing, or you learned from it, and then we're gonna give you an opportunity to pass, right? You failed it. No, you got to repeat the grade. You got to repeat the class. You got to repeat, like in college, especially, So I think that there is a valuable lesson in that, not just for the kids, but also a valuable lesson in the adults around those kids. Whether it's the educators, like the teachers and guidance counselors. I mean, there are so many different roles in school now, right? All the way to principal and vice principal and executive director and so on and so forth, that they need to also, I think there's an aspect of First Root that needs to also educate them, because your assumption is they know. They don't. They never got it.
And you're
they never
right,
had that,
Yeah, you're right. And so now let's talk about, as an entrepreneur, we'll drift into a little bit of entrepreneurial thinking. Entrepreneurs tend to think in terms of, what is the total problem my customer is facing, and how do I create a total solution? And what we've been talking about thus far is a portion of the solution, right? We've got the process, students, the software, and the curriculum. Yep. And the curriculum is what the teachers use to teach the kids. But you're pointing out something else, is who teaches the teachers? Who makes sure the teachers are ready to deliver the curriculum? So we are actually launching a First Root Academy. And the First Root Academy is for teachers. And it's going to have courses in a couple of areas. One is going to have courses in participatory budgeting, in terms of just the process. It's new for many people. It's exciting, but it's new. So people need to be able to, learn, like, what is this thing called participatory budgeting? How does it work, et cetera. But we're also going to be including in the First Root Academy personal finance education for teachers, because they're in the same boat. They may not have been taught. Some teachers are like you. We actually see a lot of teachers that have a background in the sense that they may not have been entrepreneurial children or children of entrepreneurs. Teachers are often family related, meaning my mom was a teacher. So I gravitate towards the education industry because she was a second grade school teacher. And one of my sisters is a teacher. So you do see this kind of familial relationship with teachers. And so they often, the smartest teachers, in terms of the ones that are most educated about personal finance, they tend to be the math and economics teachers who did exactly what you did, self-taught by reading some important books. Maybe they're, for example, a Dave Ramsey fan, who's another famous financial guy. Or Beth Kobliner, or Seth Rami is a rising star.
Amazing.
Right? Morgan Housel. Like, these are all, and I'm not, you and I both like Robert Kiyosaki, but there's others, right? There's like 5 or 6 others that I have found value in. And so some teachers are equipped to teach this. Many are not. So we're actually working to create the support for them to teach this. And as that occurs, you create a more powerful company and a more powerful solution, because you have kind of all the bases covered that you need to cover.
Do you see a situation where, because the thing is, whenever money is involved, there are incentives and or negative incentives. I mean fraud. I mean
Yeah,
fraud.
sure. Say yes.
And
Plainly.
that happens. I read one of the books a couple of years ago. I forgot the name of the author, but the book is titled Freakonomics.
Yeah.
And it talks about whenever there's any kind of a financial incentive, right, or finances involved, there's a high likelihood of fraud happening in that kind of a system. Do you see situations where even though the intent is for the children to get educated and to get the equipment, to get whatever they vote on, but you see that it is gamed so that either the school officials or the teachers benefit from it?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't expecting you to ask that question. So I'm going to give you for all the listeners, this man did his homework, right? This is a really thoughtful question. I'm going to answer it directly because I think it's important. U2, Bono, right? Bono from U2 has a great TED Talk about fraud and corruption. And he points out that there's corruption in every government. And the corrective behavior for corruption is greater transparency over what's happening, right? The more transparent, like fraud lives in the dark, right? And that's why in the United States financial systems, one of the reasons that we have such low amounts of fraud relative to other countries is because you can't do things like make a deposit of more than $10,000 in cash without registering it. You can't do certain, like if I were to transfer you $5,000, everyone's like, yeah, okay, Luke transferred Sabir $5,000. They must have did something. If I did $5,000 every single day for 2 months, that actually is secretly flagged and put under review because the government is like, hey, wait a minute. Transferring $5,000 of cash from one person to another person every single day is atypical behavior, and it's often associated with some form of crime. Let's look into it. Mm-hmm. So now, what are the question that you should be asking us and holding us accountable is, what is First Root doing to help prevent fraudulent behavior? And I'm going to answer this in a couple of ways. Number one is, as near as I can tell, our curriculum is the only curriculum that has a lesson on fraud. And we actually pointed out to the kids as part of fraud. And it's part of the lessons that we teach on identity management. Like, why do you need two-factor authentication when you're logging into the bank? Mm-hmm. Why should you use strong passwords? What is phishing? Because phishing is a form of fraud, and we actually talk about it.
Wow.
But now let's talk about, let's say that the budget that you give to the school is, we see typical budgets of between $2,000 and $10,000. So let's say you go to a high school and you give them $10,000. Well, that's interesting. That's enough money to be interesting to the kids, but it's not so much money that I think parents are going to try and be fraudulent about it, right? I mean, maybe a high school teacher, it could be fraudulent, but $10,000, it's not a lot, right? What if we change the numbers? What if we gave the kids $1 million in their school to be under their control? Okay, now you're a teacher. You're making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. You see this $1 million sum that is associated with the school. And to be honest, let's just say you have a drinking problem, or maybe there's your husband or your wife, your spouse has a problem. Your kid is sick and your healthcare isn't covering some of the medications. There's lots of bad and good reasons why people do bad and good things. Mm-hmm. So now you've got this $1 million and you go to your friend. I go to Sabir and I say, hey, Sabir, I'm going to steer the kids into voting for a proposal from your company. And I want you to put the bid out at $50,000 more than it costs. And I'll get you the money and you write me a check for $50,000, right? So there's this graft and there's this corruption. I mean, come on, Sabir, you live in New York City. There's a few of that going around over the years in New York City and Chicago, right? It's like, hey, my cousin Vinny, right? So what we need to do is, and what we do in our platform is every single transaction is made visible, and the history of how that transaction and how that proposal was created is made visible. So what we're doing is we're shining a light so that other people can see what's happening. And what would naturally happen is, if, let's say the kids wanted, they had $1 million budget, and what they wanted to do was build a new rec room for the band, and your buddy puts a bid in for $350,000. Well, that transparency would make it available to other people in a competitive process. And other people could go, hey, wait a minute, there's no way that should cost 350. Maybe at the top end, 290, 275, but something's going on here. And the competitive capitalistic forces would work as the way they should to fight corruption when there's transparency. So I'm so glad you brought this up, because I'm very passionate about this, because our kids are dealing with social media right now, some of it pretty bad in terms of what the recent data shows. And we need to teach them about the influence of social media. We need to teach them about corruption, and just what you said, what about fraud? And how do you know? And these are kids who are becoming citizens. Citizens doesn't, you don't become a citizen in the United States for free. You have rights, you have responsibilities. You have the right to vote. You have a responsibility to know who you're voting for and what. And this teaches them to exercise that responsibility.
I mean, if you look at, hopefully, I would hope that when big disasters happen, kids as well as adults learn from those disasters, right? And the one that I want to refer to is 2008, 2009 financial meltdown.
Right.
Now, I don't know how many average American walking Main Street would understand what exactly happened, right? And the whole, it affected the United States, but then it affected Greece, it affected, globally, many different markets, and it was just a domino effect that happened. But how many people would really understand what that really means? That's why I think just like, you should know the basics of, because, well, what do you need? If you think about, the hierarchy of needs, right? You need food, shelter, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the 5 things. I don't remember all 5. But let's say those are the 5 things. Every one of those things requires money.
That's right.
Right? And every one of those things, you need to know how to manage them so that you could prioritize between even the very basic 5 needs that you have, right?
That's right.
And if you don't have that, then you're forever, then you don't know. This is why a statement like when you hear on the news, or 2020 does a segment on something on TV that says, oh, Americans are spending 140% of their salary or income, right? What does that mean?
Right. For some people, it really does mean that some of that is traced to the affluent poor. They're using their income to get credit. And you talked about the predatory behavior of the banks. Business Week did a really interesting analysis last year. At the start of the pandemic, the profits, do you remember that one quarter where the profits of the banks were skyrocketing in the pandemic? And people were like, how can the bank's profits be skyrocketing? Do you remember that one time that the banks were reporting these record profits in the pandemic? And you're like, what? What's happening? What they did was, at the start of the pandemic, they secretly increased the credit limit of millions of Americans. And since millions of Americans are in financial distress or don't know how to manage their money, they spent more and went more into debt. And I remember getting these letters, and I said to my wife, I'm like, they just increased my credit limit. I have no idea why. And she's like, yeah, big deal. It doesn't matter because we pay our credit cards off. Okay, yeah, we have that discipline. I said, but honey, that's the point. A lot of people don't have that discipline yet. They haven't had that. So when you read those statistics, it's because their capacity to access credit increased. And that's not good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, the point I was trying to make with the 2008 and 9, the people who know what to do with your money, they'll do a lot of strange things with your money.
Yeah, and you need to know what they're
Bernie
doing.
Madoff
Yeah.
is an example, and then there were a lot of like very, very famous celebrities involved on the other side of that equation. Even though I think one of the kind of the underreported facts is that actually they did make the money back. They did pull back. I think they recovered a lot of it. From
Yeah,
what I
they did.
understood.
Yeah, they did.
So that was a good part of that. I think that when we are going through, as parents, right? Now I want to shift a little bit to the parents' responsibility, not just the education part of it. When schools have those kind of programs like I don't know what they're called, but they sell so many cookies and you'll win these kind of rewards and stuff like that. I think that I think even if the school doesn't have first root, when the school has, because that's a very typical thing a lot of schools do, that they bring back their sheet of paper and says, oh, if I sell 100 cookies and if our class sells the most, our class gets to go on a trip together to go do something, right? Even when that happens, one of the things that, because I've been in workforce, working in companies and stuff like that, typically what happens, the mom or the dad brings that sheet of paper, the kid is not present, they go like, oh, my kid is selling these cookies, everybody buy these cookies. And out of guilt or whatever it is, or being a coworker, you go and buy it and stuff like that. And then you bring the stuff back and you go like, honey, Lisa, here you go. I sold 50 cookies for you, right? But there's no value in that, because the whole idea behind that is for the kid to learn something from that process of whether it's negotiation, talking about the different products, whatever those kinds of things are. Even if they sold the two that they sold based on honesty, I think they're going to get a ton of value from that, from a learning standpoint, versus you looking like a superhero and selling 50 or 100 cookies by, holding your coworkers hostage. There's no value in that for that kid. The kid is not going to learn that, because they gave that to their dad or mom.
Absolutely. And
dad or mom did make it happen.
Yeah, the kids don't care. I mean, one of the problems with fundraisers in schools is because the kids have no voice in what is being done with the money, they don't care. We had one school who used a fundraiser to raise money for participatory budgeting. The kids raised more than $2,500, and the parents were surprised. They're like, they never get this much money. And I'm like, yeah, because when you tell them to do a fundraiser, it's because it's your idea. When they did the fundraiser here for their participatory budgeting program, they were fundraising money for their ideas. So where do you think the kid's going to raise money more? For your idea or for their own idea? I mean,
one looks like a chore, right? One is a chore.
One is a chore.
Yeah.
One is a chore, right? And that's really profound. One quick thing before we start to wrap up. It's really important for parents to have a solution to talk about money with their kids. And that can be really challenging for parents, because we often are nervous that the kids either will judge us or hold us accountable. Like, trust me, my kids are like, Dad, look at how much money you spend on wine. And I'm like, shut up. Right. But one of the things that we're doing, Sabir, is part of, and you said this very nicely at the beginning, we're a benefit corporation and we want to make a public benefit. So our platform is free for families. And using our platform, families can start to do things together. And there's 3 things that we've identified that families can do together. One is they can plan a family vacation together. Mom and dad set the budget. The kids work out with mom and dad how to spend the budget on vacation. Home improvements. You might want to build a deck in the backyard, and having the kids involved in the deck and maybe refurbishing the play space is important. Or charitable donations. when I was growing up, I kind of felt frustrated at times because my mom would pick the charities that we would donate to. And I'd be like, well, can I get involved? And you know, and so and charities are a big part of American life, right?
Yep.
America is a very charitable country. So these are three things that families can do as families to help promote financial literacy and have those conversations between the parents and the children.
So, Luke, I mean, you have shared a ton here. I'm gonna ask you for one final thought. Your $100,000 expert insight into financial literacy in the United States. What can we do? What's your number one advice?
Yeah, of course, the number one advice is to use participatory budgeting and First Root in the classroom, but that's very self-serving. I think that quite literally, the number one piece of advice is to help our children know that living within their means, as I said earlier, is the most important part of creating financial literacy and eventually wealth. I cannot create wealth ultimately without an asset, and I cannot create an asset if I don't have enough cash of some kind to acquire the asset. And if I had any small criticism of Robert Kiyosaki's work, for example, Sabir, I don't think he spent enough time talking about how do you get that first asset? How do you get that positive thing? Because in his story, he's like, it kind of goes da 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 da, and I bought an apartment complex. Right? Yeah, I bought real estate, and I'm like, wait a minute. How did you get the money to buy the real estate? Like, where was that part of the story? And I still don't know to this day where that happened. And so, for people like you and me who self-taught and started that process, I started really, really simply by buying mutual funds and buying some stocks I understood. And then from there, you start to realize, like, you get married and you're like, oh, I can't afford a home, but I can get a condo so I can at least stop renting. And I think again, to answer your question, the most important thing is you need a budget and you need to live within your means, because once you do that, all the other stuff can start to happen.
Luke, thank you very much for joining me on the show, especially the day before Thanksgiving. I really appreciate you. And thank you, audience members, for tuning in. And whether you watched it live or you're watching it and a recording, hit us up with any questions related to it. Definitely firstroot.co is the website, and at Luke Hohmann is the Twitter account. And one thing that I actually forgot to flash, and I really need to do this. This is the book that Luke has written. It's available on Amazon, and you could actually get it on Amazon in paperback and in Kindle format. Those two formats are definitely available. You should definitely check out the book. Luke, thank you for being on the show, and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you so much.